Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Australian Reptile Park and back to yet another live stream. We are in a fairly familiar exhibit. We are, of course, in with Elvis, and if you don't know Elvis, you probably live under a rock, but here's our big saltwater crocodile. He's huge, and we are going to, of course, feed him for you here today. Now, Dan's going to do the feeding. We are going to change things up a little bit. Often when we feed Elvis, we'll feed him from the edge of the pool there, the bank, I guess, and he'll come out a little bit. We'll feed him the food on a reasonably short stick. But today what we're going to do is we're actually going to get Elvis to demonstrate a natural behaviour of the saltwater crocodile, and that is his ability to leap up and out of the water, and it's what we call a tail walk because they use their tail in order to do it. And I'll talk a bit more about that when he's actually going through the motions and jumping up for that bit of food. But while Dan sets up there and while Elvis gets into position, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Elvis. Now, most people want to know how old Elvis is. He's, of course, a very large croc, and the assumption is that he would be, of course, quite old, and he probably is. But we can't say that for certain. We don't know how old Elvis truly is. He was a wild-caught crocodile. He came from Darwin Harbour up in the top end, up in the Northern Territory, and I spent a little bit of time in a crocodile farm before arriving to us here at the Reptile Park. And that was way back in 2007. Now Elvis is starting to make his way over to the edge of the pool, but I'm sure once he sees Jake there tapping that stick around and he sees Dan starting to wave his hand and the food around, Elvis is going to do a big U-turn and head straight over to where Dan is. There he goes. You can see very responsive. We'll take him on a lap. Might as well. But I'm going to take the camera. That way I can get you nice and close to Elvis, and I can talk as I do so. As I was saying, Elvis, he arrived here at the Reptile Park in around 2007. So he's been here for quite a while now. Some of you, if you visited the park prior to 2007, you may have even seen our previous croc, Eric, of course, named after Eric Worrell, and he was a big croc too, but I think Elvis has got him by maybe a foot or so. Elvis is that little bit longer. And there Elvis is, just gliding through the water. You can see how easy it is for a crocodile to disappear when they stick their head and their body under the water. Even though Elvis is about 450, maybe even 500 kilos, and he's just a few inches below the water there, he does not make a single ripple or disturbance as he moves. Now he can do that due to all those lumps and bumps that line their back and their tail. Those are called osteoderms or scutes. I'll see if I can turn him the other way. And those bumps quite literally create currents and countercurrents beneath the surface, here he goes, turning around, which cancel each other out. And that allows even very large salties like Elvis to move just inches below the surface, as we see here, without a single disturbance. Now today we've got the advantage. We can see through the water, nice clear water in his pool. You can see exactly what he's doing. But you can imagine if you're on holiday up in the northern parts of the country, maybe you're up in Cairns or up the Cape or in the top end, and you come across a dark, murky river where saltwater crocodiles would no doubt be occurring, you would have no idea that a big saltwater croc was sitting right there. And by the time you do figure that out, it's probably going to be a little bit too late. Now there's Dan. He's ready to go. He's got some food there tied onto the pole. And what Elvis will do is he'll see Dan standing there and should just kind of stop, stick his head out of the water a bit, and then he's going to do a couple of those jump ups for us. See how we go. Depends on how good Dan wants to be today. Now, I referred to it before as a tail walk, and that's because they use their thick, muscular tail. In fact, the tail's almost half the length of the entire crocodile, in order to propel themselves up and out of the water. Now, they do this more so when they're young. When they're a small croc, they're feeding on, of course, smaller food items. Maybe a bird or a small mammal, frog. And some of these things may, of course, be in the trees above the water. In fact, flying fox, that would be a fantastic meal for a small saltwater croc. And so what they have evolved to do, and most crocodilians can do this, is stick their head out of the water as we're about to see. They'll line something up that is above them, and then they'll leap up and out of the water to snag that bit of food. Now Elvis is hopefully going to show us an example of this, although he does sometimes get a bit funny when he's doing this. He likes to play a little game where he just encourages Dan to bring that food closer and closer and closer. Oh, got a good view where I was there. Let me go behind this tree.
We'll just make him work for it a bit, Jake.
Yeah, let's jump him around a bit. You can see how much of a splash he makes when he throws his body around. Remember, he's incredibly heavy, very powerful, and when he pushes himself up and out of the water, he really throws that water around. Now, of course, like anything, crocodiles, they require exercise. It is very, very easy for a crocodile, especially in captivity where there's really unlimited food availability, to get a little bit fat. So what we like to do is encourage Elvis to really move around. Oh, there he goes. Really move around, and that way he's burning a bit of energy. He's using all his muscles. Oh, here he goes. All right, getting a little more serious now. There you go.
He's having fun.
All right,
There we go.
just like that. Straight down. Now you would have heard that sound that Elvis was making as he was slapping his jaws around. That's what we call a jaw pop. Saltwater crocodiles have the strongest bite force of any animal on the face of the earth by a very long way. So when those jaws come together, they make that sound, that hollow pop sound, and it is very, very scary, especially when you are standing this close to one. Now I'm going to move Elvis back this way, just so I can get back around that side of the pool and answer some questions. Of course, it's another great opportunity to see Elvis in all his glory. Notice he's not hiding anymore, he's skimming along the surface of the water, whereas before he was right underneath. Come on, El.
Jake's coming, Jake.
All right. Back under the water. I'm going to hand over to Jake there, and I'm going to answer some questions.
What type of meat did you feed today, Jake?
Today Elvis got some beef. So basically we've got a couple of steaks, which we all love except for Dan. And yeah, Elvis, one of his favourites, but he does get a very varied diet, so we'll give him fish, chicken, goat, deer, all sorts of things, but they're strictly carnivorous.
So, Jake, we saw you just have to move Elvis back before you could get past him. How easily could he have gotten you at the edge there?
Oh, there's certain areas within the pool that it would be very dangerous to walk past if Elvis was sitting right there. For example, if his head was right there at the edge of the pool, I would not be able to walk past this little narrow walkway here because he could easily strike out and pin me up against the fence or the garden here. So we like to give Elvis a wide berth, especially when he's just had a bit of food and he's kind of a bit revved up. It's a pretty dangerous time to be walking too close to his head. But now he's safely over the other side there, and Jake's keeping a close eye on him.
How far can he strike from the water's edge?
So I guess your average strike range, or the maximum strike range for a saltwater croc, especially a bigger one like Elvis, would be to about his back leg. So that's about 2/3, maybe just a bit over half even his body length. So still quite a distance. So on a big 4.6 metre saltwater croc like this, he can probably strike out maybe 3 to 3.5 metres. So it is at a substantial strike range.
So we had a pretty good view of his teeth. How do we get them so wide? Is that just natural or?
It's very much natural for Elvis. He arrived with these beautiful big white teeth, and he does have exceptionally large teeth, much bigger than average even for a croc his size. So I guess we just got very lucky, and Elvis, he is a perfect example, especially his teeth, of what a saltwater crocodile should look like.
We're getting a few questions about his eyes. What size is it? What do they do with them underwater? Do you just want to go through what their eyesight's like as well?
Yeah, so for the size of his body, he actually has very, very small eyes, maybe about the size of a ping pong ball, so very tiny on a big animal like him. But they do have a special ability to be able to pop a little membrane across their eye. It's called a nictitating membrane. And when they go under the water, that clear membrane will come across the eye, and it basically acts as a pair of swimming goggles. So whilst he is underwater and whilst he does have quite small eyes, you can still kind of see what's going on under the water, especially in clear water like this. You wouldn't be able to in dark, murky water where they're typically living. And so in that case, they would be much more reliant on their other senses, particularly their sense of touch. They feel vibration with these tiny pressure receptors right around their jaw and their head and along their body. So he would be relying on that more so than his eyesight. But yeah, they do have the ability to open the eye underwater because of that membrane.
Has he ever scared you?
It scares me every time I come in here. On the average feed, he does some pretty typical things, but we can certainly get scared by Elvis when he does abnormal things, which he does from time to time, especially when we give him those really big food items. When he gets 20 or 30 kilos of food in a sitting and he's doing death rolls and smashing out of the water to grab it, that's when really he's probably at his most scary. But it is important for us when we're working with him to constantly be reminded of what he's capable of, never become complacent with him.
So you mentioned the big food items. How often do you feed him big food items, and what's his feeding schedule like?
So his feeding schedule is quite varied. Obviously throughout the year, especially when we have visitors here at the park, we're feeding him fairly small portions because we're feeding him fairly frequently, every single Saturday and Sunday at least, during the school term, and then in the school holidays every single day. So if we were to feed him a really large carcass, he may not eat for a number of weeks. So to basically keep him in that routine of feeding most days, fairly small portions, but from time to time we do like to reward him and enrich him with a really large carcass, because that's, I guess, more of what a natural food item would be like for a big croc like him. He would be feeding on something like a kangaroo or a wallaby, maybe even a water buffalo, all things that he has to rip and tear and shake apart. So for him to do that from time to time throughout the year is still really important.
Can you tell us the difference between a saltwater croc and a freshwater croc?
Yeah, certainly. So, as you mentioned, saltwater croc, freshwater croc, they are the two species of crocodile that we have living in northern Australia. Now, I guess probably the main difference between the two is the size. A female saltwater croc might get to 3 metres, big male could potentially reach 6 metres. A freshwater crocodile, only going to get to maybe 2.5 metres in length, even for a large male. So the size, much smaller on the freshwater croc, and the jaw is also very different. A freshwater crocodile is mostly a fish-eating crocodile, so that's what they've evolved to feed on. They're specialised fish eaters, so they don't have the really strong, powerful, thick jaw like a salty does. They have a very long, slender jaw with very long, sharp teeth, designed for catching fish, not really designed for a large mammal like the saltwater crocodile. So they look a bit different, feeding on different things.
All right, Jake, one last question. Can you tell us about how Elvis sleeps?
Yeah, so it's very much up to him whether he wants to sleep in the water or on the land. He can do either. Of course, he has to breathe. They breathe air, so he can't just sit at the bottom of the pool all night long. He does have to come up for a breath at least every couple of hours. So if he is sleeping in the water, he'll probably do it right at the water's edge where he can kind of keep his snout out or take a breath every once in a while. But quite often what Elvis prefers to do is sleep out on the land. And if you look behind me, you can actually see a little dirt patch there. And that's where Elvis slides out most nights at some point, sleeps up there on the land, and then he'll go back in during the day. All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed that. Again, another glimpse at Elvis, and he got an interesting feed today. You got to see him jump around a bit, and of course you would have heard those jaws as well, which is always very, very exciting. If you do enjoy these live streams, continue watching. We're going to be doing these every single weekday while we're locked down. We hope you guys are staying safe. And of course, as always, if you are looking for ways to help us out here at the park, or you're looking for things to do, head to our website, reptilepark.com.au, and you can find all sorts of links and activities and ways that you can work with us here at the park even whilst we are closed. All right, thank you guys. We'll see you next time. Cheers.